Alright, let's get this shit over with. Monday Night Raw from Newark, New Jersey. Tonight, on Monday, as I record this, immediately after the show, in one word, it was a bore. It was a bore to get through these 3 hours. It was a bore through most of these segments, and the main event was not even a bore, but just overall confusing and made absolutely no sense. Throughout the whole night, what we are enticed to stick around for is that we're going to get Shane McMahon and Drew McIntyre against Roman Reigns and a partner of Shane's choosing. And if that was not absurd enough, strap in, because we've got a wild ride. Alright, so let's just get this started. We'll go segment by segment. Don't forget to check out the podcast show that we do. Myself and Chris. We try to do it on Thursdays, but it's kind of in a funk right now of what day we actually end up doing it on. But we'll try to have one this Thursday. We're going to be doing predictions for both AEW Fight for the Fallen as well as WWE Extreme Rules. Links for everything there will be in the description of this video. Alright, so let's go right into this thing. Raw starts right away, surprisingly, with a match. Who would have thought there was no 20-minute promo to set this up? I would have figured that this show was going to start with Roman Reigns or Shane McMahon coming out. But instead, we start with Becky Lynch and Seth Rollins. They are going to take on Zelina Vega and Andrade in what is announced as an elimination mixed tag match. And as soon as they said this, my mind began to wander. How exactly does a mixed elimination tag work? If only the men can face the men and the women can face the women, then how do you eliminate one without eliminating both? So that, and all of this just because on a whim, 20-some years into the existence of this program, Vince McMahon woke up one day, then just decided, goddamn, pal, I can't stand when there's wrestling on commercials. And so that is when the abolishment of that began, and we've been given 2 out of 3 falls matches, elimination matches, and every gimmick under the sun, just so we can have the match restarted during the commercial, and then get back to it after the commercial. It just, like, what was wrong with having, like I think before they changed this, that there was a bit too much of cutting away to a commercial during a match, but that wasn't a problem before. It wasn't a problem when Raw was 2 hours. I don't even think it was a big problem when Raw expanded to 3 hours. That it just is so strange. And the premise behind it is to give all of the wrestling to the viewer. And in that process, we don't actually get any more in-ring time. It just gives us more hoops to jump through to get to the desired outcome, which I just can't, for the life of me, understand. So, that has made these past few Raws very clunky, in my opinion. It's very see-through, because in a situation like this, I mean, you know that there's going to be a pin, and then it'll go to commercial, and then everything will get set back up. It just becomes too formulaic, which I guess you could say about the old format too. With before, when there was wrestling during the commercials, it was just the babyface has a fiery beginning. He hits a dive to the outside, and Michael Cole says, "Raw rolls on." And then we come back, and the babyface is now in peril, and rest holds and shin locks and Baron Corbin rest holds of doom and all that. But in this case, you cut that part out, but in the process, you're not giving the viewer any more actual wrestling, so that it doesn't quite add up. To go through this match, though, Zelina Vega and Andrade versus Becky and Seth Rollins, who, in case you didn't know, they are a real-life couple, as Michael Cole insists on telling us. I don't know what he means by real life. Are we supposed to assume that any other couple in WWE is not real life? Right away, getting in early, Becky will eliminate Zelina Vega with a disarmer, which I guess turns this into a singles match now. But then, after that, Lacey Evans shows up in the crowd, and Becky goes to fight her. She punches her a few times, and Seth breaks them up as they go to a commercial. And then they come back, and Becky is on the apron, but they are telling us that she is eliminated because of the rules of the match. But yet she is on the apron, and Zelina Vega is on the outside. So, is she actually eliminated? If Andrade would have pinned Seth Rollins, would that have just left Andrade and Becky? Would it have been a draw? What exactly are the rules here? So, Andrade and Seth do a few minutes of actual wrestling until later Vega gets a Hurricane Rana in on Rollins on the outside. Becky comes in after Vega, but Seth tries to back her off, and that leads Andrade to run in on Rollins, but Becky pushes Seth out of the way and takes an elbow from Andrade. And Andrade tries to take advantage of Seth Rollins being distracted by Becky being down to that elbow, asking Becky repeatedly if she is okay. Andrade takes advantage of Seth, hits Seth with the running knees in the corner for a near fall, and then later Zelina Vega would try to get another Hurricane Rana in on Rollins, but this time Rollins blocks and holds her in place for Becky to come in with a drop kick to take out Vega, and after that Rollins would end up pinning Andrade with a stomp for the win. It is a shame that this is all we have for Andrade at this point, is just to be a pawn in this shitty tabloid drama story of Becky Lynch and Seth Rollins going into their match at Extreme Rules, but that is where we reside. I guess Andrade still hasn't learned good enough English for Vince McMahon to dive in on a push for him, even though he has a manager that is there to speak English for him. But nonetheless, just don't worry about that. After this, Corbin comes in and blindsides Rollins at the ramp. Becky starts throwing punches at Corbin, but in comes Lacey Evans, who takes out Becky with a women's right on the chin to Becky. This one looked hella stiff, and I guess it has to for it to actually look good and not completely phony, as sometimes it does. But this one looked good, and then randomly Paul Heyman walks down the ramp as we go to commercial. And then we come back, and we have Lacey and Corbin having a shitty banter back and forth before they actually go to Paul Heyman in the ring. And so they go to Paul Heyman, who promises us this time that Brock Lesnar is going to cash in his Money in the Bank briefcase this Sunday at Extreme Rules. And this time he did not tease that he might be there, he might not, like he normally does. This time he said it is not a prediction, it is a spoiler. And Paul even points out here that every time that Paul has said that line, it's not a prediction, it is a spoiler. He has delivered every time since WrestleMania 30, when he first proclaimed that Brock Lesnar would defeat The Undertaker and end his undefeated WrestleMania streak. That is not a prediction, that is a spoiler. And ever since then, anytime Paul Heyman has said that, you could take it to the bank. And so Paul then elaborates even further here and says that, so if there was a time that he would be pulling the wool over our eyes, he has earned up enough credibility to make us believe that. So, ultimately, he said all of this to still say, in the end, yeah, Brock might cash in. Without exactly saying that, but that's essentially what he said. He promised Brock will cash in, but then at the end he just said, well, maybe I'm lying, though. So, we will see. So we get a recap of Braun Strowman and Bobby Lashley blowing up the LED board last week. And they splice in a video from Bobby Lashley, I believe it was on his Twitter page, that he talks about how Strowman took him to the hospital, but Lashley this Sunday will take Strowman to the morgue. We are going to have a death on live streaming television, according to Bobby Lashley. It is then announced that it will be a last man standing match between Bobby Lashley and Braun Strowman at the pay-per-view this Sunday, and I will leave the benefit of the doubt there, because I liked what they did on this show with Bobby and the last show with the angle with Lashley and Strowman going through the LED screen on the ramp. And so I will at least give this a chance that I am interested in seeing this match. When they did it at Super Showdown, I had zero interest in it. When they were doing tug of wars and arm wrestling contests, I had negative interest in it. Probably -6 to be exact. This time, I feel like they've properly built it. Both guys come across as legit tough guys, at least for the last 2 weeks. So I will at least give this a chance. They come back and there's an awful Shane and Drew skit. And this would be an ongoing theme throughout the night, where they're trying to find Roman Reigns a tag team partner. And so they come up on this garbage man. And they ask him about being Roman's partner, and they'll get back to him. But my main takeaway from this was just how out of place Drew McIntyre comes across in these segments. When Drew McIntyre, who has that Scottish accent and the voice and the look of a stone cold killer, and he's palling around with Shane McMahon, being his lackey, and trying to help him find a tag team partner for Roman Reigns in the means of this garbage man. That garbage man, he should have gone out to the ring and just thrown everything in the stadium away, because this show was garbage. We have a 6-man tag. It is 2 out of 3 falls, because of course it is. It's Elias and the Revival against the Usos and Miz. Revival get the first fall with the Shatter Machine off some sort of distraction with Miz and Elias on the outside. I wasn't exactly sure what even happened because Elias just like randomly wasn't there for the rest of the match. So I think I might have actually missed what actually caused that. But nonetheless, that first pin would go to a commercial, and then coming back, Miz would get the second pin on Scott Dawson, and then the Usos would take out everyone. And they take out everyone. They take out the Revival. They do a dive, and then they get one of the guys in the Revival in the ring, and they're throwing super kicks. And out of nowhere, the bell just rings randomly, and we're told that it is to restart the match because after the fall, you have to reset the match. I thought as soon as I heard the bell that they were getting disqualified for something. I was very lost with that. What the need of another bell was when they didn't even go to a commercial. They just kept going. Either way, Usos end up pinning one of the Revival members with a top rope splash. We get a video package of Drake Maverick and his wife on their honeymoon. Drake has been killing it on Twitter with these videos of them in Orlando and all that. Even though they live in Orlando, that was poor Renee's honeymoon. And it ends with Drake saying that there's one more stop before they go to their actual honeymoon, and that is in Newark, New Jersey. Now, I question why exactly Drake would even go to the Raw show. Why wouldn't he just go on the honeymoon and have an excuse to not go to Raw and not have these cretins, the undercard mafia run after him? Why doesn't a 24/7 champion just win the title and then never show up again? I mean, that would make sense to me. And then you could do something where someone actually ends up finding them. I don't know. Drake promises that after they get out of there, he will give her the honeymoon that she deserves. And that is when Renee says that after that happens, then they will be able to finally consummate their marriage. And this makes Drake yell in excitement, which attracts all of the geeks to come chase after him. He has to leave his wife on the shipping crates by herself as he runs away. We get another one of these Drew and Shane segments. This time they're trying to recruit the guy that is selling beer in the concessions. Yeah. After this, we get Rey Mysterio. It was hyped throughout the show, but up until this point, that we would have Rey Mysterio's in-ring return after his shoulder injury, going back to the match with Samoa Joe, where he won the United States title and then relinquished it. He issues an open challenge to anyone, and I can just feel the excitement. It's intensifying. Could it be Bray Wyatt? Could Bray Wyatt finally debut and make a mark by destroying Rey Mysterio? Instead, it is Bobby Lashley. And Lashley comes out. He squashes Mysterio in quick fashion. And the overwhelming positive in this is that it made Lashley look great. Just, barring the thought of how the hell is Lashley even here after what was supposed to be serious injuries of the last week's show, it made Lashley just look absolutely dominant. It was a good momentum-building match for him going into the Sunday match with Braun Strowman. Bobby throws Ray out of the ring and he drags him to the ramp. He stares at the LED screen that Braun Strowman had put him through last week. and he gorilla presses Rey, but the refs come in and they get in Lashley's path and forbid him from throwing Rey Mysterio into this screen. It's strange how the refs sometimes actually try to stop things from happening, but then other times they just don't care, and then they come in after everything is over. But this time they did not want Rey Mysterio to go through that screen. They were probably instructed that those screens aren't cheap. We can't just break them every week. Protect them with your life. So Bobby instead just gorilla presses Rey Mysterio onto the three refs standing wake, and he then grabs a mic and says that on Sunday that he will be the last man standing. We have a Charlie Caruso trying to interview AJ Styles about why he did what he did last week. Why did he attack Ricochet after the match, and why did he reunite with his club members and beat down on Ricochet together? And so AJ just simply tells her, "Get out of my face," and then walks into his dressing room. I would say that this was a due moment for Charlie, being how rude she is to everyone else. It was about time someone threw it back in her face. We have No Way Jose versus Cesaro. Only one fall, and that's another thing. You can tell that a match is not going to be long if it is not a 2 out of 3 falls match. If it's just a 1 fall match, as this one was, you can know for sure that it will not last until the commercial break. Cesaro beats Jose with a swing into a sharpshooter and gets the tap out win. We get there were 2 of these segments with the Street Profits as they randomly showed up last week, and now they are back again, and they were here to plug the WWE Network and hype up all of the matches. I still have no idea why they're here, but when they're the NXT Tag Team Champions and the newly crowned NXT Tag Team Champions, I don't understand that, but they are very entertaining, and I can't think of many people that could have turned this sort of promo hype stuff for the pay-per-view as entertaining as the Street Profits were able to make it. So I will give them that. We get a recap of Mike and Maria Kanellis from last week of Maria calling Mike her bitch, and then the whole thing about her being pregnant, and that Mike isn't man enough to impregnate her, and that she should have asked Becky Lynch to do it instead. We get all that recap, and then immediately after that, we're shown Mike Kanellis going over and apologizing to Maria. So if we get this straight, Maria called Mike her bitch last week and said that he was not man enough to impregnate her. And then the next week, Mike is apologizing to her. That is marriage at its finest, if I don't say so myself. Then after that, Maria, as she's pregnant, she has these weird food wantings. And so she tells Mike to go get her ice cream and pickles. And then it became a whole ordeal because Mike asked if she wanted non-fat. And you know what Mike was stepping into with that. More on that later. They did a not good interview with Bayley and Nikki Cross, split screen with Michael Cole conducting the interview. There was nothing new. It was the same material that they've been doing for the past several weeks of Bayley trying to tell Nikki that Alexa Bliss is using her and all that other stuff. The only new bits that we learned here was that later on they would be doing a beat the clock challenge between Bayley and Nikki Cross. And whoever wins would get to pick the stipulation for the Alexa Bliss and Bayley match for the SmackDown Women's title at Extreme Rules. It was revealed that Bayley would be facing Sarah Logan and that Nikki Cross would be facing Dana Brooke. After this, we got Carmella and R-Truth searching for Drake Maverick. Eventually, he runs past them, along with everyone chasing behind him, and then Truth runs after him in the opposite direction. Brilliant strategy by R-Truth. After that, we got a Viking Raiders squash match. And I say squash match because it was two local guys, and both of them had the last name Justin. Who in the world has the last name Justin? I don't trust anyone with two first names. That's one thing you should know. I don't trust people with two first names. So this was another squash match for the Viking Raiders. They've done absolutely nothing since being called up for no reason, may I add, when they were the NXT Tag Team Champions. And they weren't even allowed to drop the NXT Tag Team titles. Instead, they just relinquished them because what they had on the main roster was so urgent that they just had to get them out of NXT. And what we are doing with them, just squash matches. And then a hiatus for 2 months until they finally came back and had more squash matches. Drake Maverick runs in after this match is over, along with everyone else chasing behind him, all of the undercard. Some of them ran into the ring, and the Viking Raiders took them out, and that allowed Maverick to escape. Charlie Caruso tries to get a word from Roman about his partner. And Roman says, the only people playing mind games are my team. And you would think by the end of the show we would understand what that meant, but that we did not. We get Ricochet versus Luke Gallows coming into the title match that Ricochet will have against AJ Styles this Sunday. Ricochet wins with a roll-up in quick fashion to the big man Luke Gallows. And see, this is another thing. This was another blatant attempt to avoid having wrestling in commercials. I don't understand for the life of me why they couldn't just do Ricochet versus Luke Gallows or Ricochet versus Carl Anderson, whichever one you want to do, and just give them 15 minutes through a commercial and just let them have a match and let that be the go-home for the match at Extreme Rules with him and AJ. And you can do whatever angle you want to do after the match and have AJ lay him out as they did here. But why, oh why did we have to do it this way? So after Ricochet wins with a roll-up on Gallows in quick fashion, Styles comes in, and before the match, Ricochet mentioned in his promo that he's expecting to have to go through all three members of the club tonight because they're all going to be there. Both of them are going to be at ringside with Gallows, so he's just prepared to take on all of them. So AJ takes him up on that, and he says, how about you face Carl Anderson right now? And right after that, they cut to commercial. And then we come back, and we get Anderson versus Ricochet. And my notes just say, so Ricochet is an idiot, that he could not see what was being set up right in front of his eyes. He could have easily just said, "Nah, I'm good," walked away. I already won my match, and I know what you're going to do. You're trying to weaken me up for the match against you 6 days from now, but I already won my match, and I'm going to go get some rest now. But that is just another example of a prideful babyface. He'll never turn down a fight, even if he looks like an idiot. Ricochet beats Anderson. It was a longer match, but there wasn't a lot to it. It was mostly just Anderson doing some holds on Ricochet and Ricochet fighting from underneath until he eventually comes in with a 630 for the win. And of course, immediately AJ and Gallows run in. They beat up Ricochet, who again is an idiot. And Gallows and Anderson feed Ricochet into a Styles Clash off the top rope, but AJ opts to just sit him down instead. And he claims that he'll let him go so that he doesn't have any excuse on Sunday as long as he stays down. And so AJ and Gallows and Anderson, they go to leave, but Ricochet gets back up. And that was the one thing AJ told him to do, was stay down. But Ricochet starts to get back up, so Styles comes back in. The two, Gallows and Anderson, hold Ricochet in place for a phenomenal forearm. 2 straight weeks, by the way, where the news has leaked of a team or a person re-signing, and then they are made to look like idiots the next week. Last week, we had Mike and Maria Kanellis being re-signed, and then after that, on the Monday, we had Mike Kanellis' balls chopped off in front of us on live TV. And so then this week, Gallows and Anderson, they decided to re-sign with WWE, and they both get beaten in individual singles matches against the same guy. So there you go. If you re-sign, you will still just be treated as a doormat. Drake runs back to Renee, who is still sitting on the shipping crate that he left her at. They're about to leave, but then Truth and Carmella come in. They were hiding in the shipping crates next to them. And Truth chases after Maverick, and he piggyback carries the ref with him. And after this, we get another one of these segments with Shane and Drew. This time they are recruiting a janitor to be Roman Reigns' tag team partner. And Shane realizes, he says, we've been going about this wrong all night. Well, we need to have an incentive for this guy to be Roman's partner. And so he offers him $5,000 to be Roman Reigns' tag team partner. Which is fine, because it's a janitor. I would be more offended if that they tried to do that with an active wrestler, but in this case, it was a janitor. So the janitor says, "Sure, I'll do whatever you want for $5,000." And Shane even says that they'll get him a mask. This was a mistake, as we'll find out later. After this, we get the Beat the Clock challenge: Bayley versus Sarah Logan, who earlier was referred to as a former Riot Squad member when they announced the match between Bayley and Logan. But as a former Riot Squad member, she came out to Ruby Riot's theme song and the Riot Squad Titantron. So, is she? Or are we still in the translation phase? The crowd enjoyed this match so much that they chanted for CM Punk. They did, at least it wasn't an AEW chant. But Bayley ends up winning in 4 minutes and 32 seconds. Nikki Cross would come out immediately after that for her match. She beats Dana Brooke handily with a minute 50 left. So it took her about 2 minutes and 20 seconds to beat Dana Brooke. Nikki cuts a promo afterwards, says that Bayley is questioning Nikki and Alexa because she doesn't know what true friendship is. And when she said that's when the wheels started turning, and my immediate thought was, okay, well, Sasha Banks is going to come back. Nikki says that she has already chosen the stipulation for their match, her and Alexa's match, and she declares that it will be a 2-on-1 handicap match with Nikki and Alexa against Bayley for the SmackDown Women's title. Nikki then says that Bayley needs to find a friend that is as good as Alexa. And again, Sasha Banks tease. I'm beginning to feel like Sasha Banks will be coming in for a save for Bayley this Sunday. And instead of making it a surprise, they mirrored it out with this Nikki Cross promo. Bayley then slaps Nikki, gives her a Bayley to belly, followed by an elbow drop from the top rope. We go back to Maria and Mike Kanellis backstage. And this time, as Mike has gotten Maria her ice cream, Maria drops the bombshell on Mike that she is not sure if Mike is the father of this child. So, I'm assuming that this is going to be an ongoing storyline where it is another wrestler who is actually the father. Who could it be? Insert the "It's me, Austin" gif here. If it were Vince McMahon, that would be something. So we'll see how that progresses as Mike's public neutering continues. And what's fascinating though is that just staying on this for a second is that we feel like this storyline is out of nowhere with Maria and Mike. But if you look back to, I guess it was like 2016 when they both came back at that Money in the Bank show. I think it was 2016. But they came back and the whole gimmick was, Mike Bennett. He was Mike Bennett before coming into WWE, but when he debuted, he was announced as Mike Kanellis, which is Maria's last name. So the whole storyline that never ended up being fleshed out was that, Mike took Maria's last name, and that it could have eventually led to this sort of angle where Maria is cucking Mike. But instead, they debuted, and then they did all of nothing for 3 years, and now they're finally doing that. We have Corey Graves going to the back to interview Seth Rollins and Becky Lynch. He asks about the same questions that we've heard theorized about the Becky Lynch and Seth Rollins tag match at Extreme Rules, and says, how would you feel if your partner lost your title for you? And so Becky gives a long-winded answer and talking about Corey Graves being emo and pretending to be a journalist and all that sort of jazz. And Becky walks off, and Seth just says, "Yeah, what she said," and leaves. I don't understand. Like, Seth Rollins just comes off as so lame in these promos. Like, Becky is still upholding her persona a little bit, even though it's been watered down to nothing. But Seth just comes off so bad in these segments to me. And speaking of lame, there was a new T-shirt for Seth Rollins that was released on WWE.com today. Just simply the man's man. I'm sure the sales for that are through the roof. So, we get our main events. Roman and Gary the Goat Garbett, the janitor, who's wearing a Sin Cara mask against against Shane McMahon and Drew McIntyre. So, from the beginning, my thought on this was that they're probably going to put, as soon as they said something about a mask, that's when you start thinking, okay, well, someone else is going to end up being under the mask, right? So, who could it be that would make sense to help Roman Reigns in this time of need? We get the match, and this did not go long at all. Roman ends up getting pushed into his corner, and an accidental tag was made from Roman to Gary. And then after this, we didn't see Roman for the rest of the match. Like he was taking a nap on the outside. So, Gary is the legal man, and he gets dragged into the ring. But then out of nowhere, he starts pulling off some high-flying moves and hitting enziguris and springboard handstand elbows. As soon as he hits the dive to the outside, I knew exactly who it is, because I've seen him do that exact same dive 1,000 times. And I knew that it was none other than Cedric Alexander. Why was it Cedric Alexander? I don't know. And then in the end, Shane just ended up pinning him. I don't even remember what move Shane hit. It was just like out of nowhere, the match was over. So they pulled Cedric into this match, and they gave him a main event spot just for him to have a brief flurry as a janitor and then end up being pinned easily by Shane McMahon. And then in the end, they unmask him. They as in Roman and Cedric standing in the ring. And they're all smiling, and it's like they were acting like they got one of, we got you. We got you this time. We fooled you. You lost. You had the element of surprise on your hands with Shane and Drew thinking that you were a janitor, and you still lost. To me, this made Cedric look worse than he did before. Cedric looked better when he was just chasing around R-Truth and Drake Maverick and being a background player in that. In this case, he comes in with the element of surprise. Shane and Drew are expecting to beat up on a lowly janitor. And instead, you catch them off guard. And you still lose. Easily, may I add. And, yeah. This made absolutely no sense to me. It was so out of left field. It didn't work. Because I still don't get what the point of it was. Cedric has nothing to do with the tag team match that Roman Reigns and The Undertaker are going to have against Shane and Drew on the pay-per-view. And that was another gimmick of this match, was that if The Undertaker interfered, then he would be taken out of the match. Well, that didn't happen. Roman's not teaming with Cedric. I just don't get why the point of putting Cedric in that spot just to have him lose anyway in easy fashion. It just doesn't add up to me. It doesn't make sense why he was helping Roman. I guess he was just trying to get on TV. He's been lost in those 24/7 segments for so long. He was just running around chasing after that title, and he happened to find the garbage man with the mask and decided, here's my chance. And he still lost. So if this is what Roman meant by his team, then I don't understand what the direction of this is at all. I don't even think that they have, and if they do something different, then I'll gladly say I'm wrong. But I don't feel like they have any plans to do anything with Cedric Alexander. I feel like this angle was a stopgap to get them through this match into the pay-per-view, and then after that, Cedric is just going to be completely forgotten and go back to obscurity until they send him back to 205 Live. Maybe you should meet up with Buddy Murphy and they could tag together, since they've both been called up from the cruiserweight division and are doing absolutely nothing. I don't understand this ending. It made absolutely no sense. This was the go-home angle to your Extreme Rules pay-per-view. Did this make you want to see Roman Reigns and The Undertaker versus Shane McMahon and Drew McIntyre? Sure as hell didn't for me. I can't get my head around the absurdity of this, and it just felt like they were booked into a corner, they felt like, and they needed an out. And so their out was to just get Cedric to come in and eat a pin. I would have just let the freaking garbage man do it. Just let him actually be in the match. I don't know. It seems like that might be Cedric Alexander's future, though, if he continues to do absolutely nothing. And he goes back to obscurity. He might be a garbage man backstage, just chasing after a 24/7 title. That was Raw, and there was not a lot redeeming about this show. It was just a lot of killing time, it felt like, and in some ways, I would, as I broke down in that main event segment, it was absolutely illogical. And I mean, that was the only thing to me that was so illogically badly booked that it took me out of the show, because everything else, it was just boring. It wasn't illogical, other than the 2 out of 3 falls nonsense and the elimination nonsense. That stuff can go to hell. But that's all I have. I wish I had more to say, but coming off of last week's Raw, where we had a big AJ Styles heel turn to end the show, a hot opening, some other surprising stuff, even though it dragged in the middle a lot, but there were at least notes to talk about. In this case, I don't understand what exactly the point of this show was. I feel like if you did not watch this show, then you did not miss anything, and you can still just watch the pay-per-view on Sunday, and none of this stuff would have mattered. But I'm getting out of here. We'll be back Wednesday morning to try to review SmackDown Live, and then we'll be back on Thursday to predict the Extreme Rules and AEW Fight for the Fallen. And then over the weekend, we'll try to have reviews for both of those shows. So stay tuned to the YouTube channel. Follow the podcast links in the description on Spreaker, iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, all those great places. And until next time, be sure you're subscribed to the channel to make sure that you don't miss any content. And until then, peace.